What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Classic Octane. I am Taylor. Today we are back on the R100GS Paris Dakar. If you missed the first video on this bike, I'll throw a card up now so you can go and check it out. We found this bike a couple of weeks ago. We brought it in the shop, got it running, but we identified quite a few things that the bike needs to kind of be in tip-top shape. So that's what we're going to start to do today, is knock out some of that list. The first thing I want to do is just give this bike a good clean. It's got a coating of oil and grease and grime and everything on it. I want to go out in the driveway, hose it down with some degreaser, clean it all off, get us a good fresh starting point, and then we'll start to knock out that to-do list. Bike is back inside and on the lift, as you can see. I did go ahead and throw it on the center stand as well. It'll be a little bit more stable that way. Also, it'll give us easier access to pulling our wheels and tires off when it comes time to change that. I'm not going to worry about those today. My main focus is actually going to be doing these pushrod tube seals, fixing that main oil leak we had. Right now, they're only leaking on the left side of the bike, but because I have a full gasket kit, I'm going to go ahead and do both sides. It's only a matter of time before the right side starts leaking as well, because I'm sure they're the same age. So I've never worked on an airhead BMW in my life, so who better qualified to walk you through the process? First thing I need to do is just kind of get everything connected to the head out of the way. I need to remove the carburetors. I need to remove this plastic shield so we can get to the exhaust. I may or may not have to remove this side engine guard. We'll have to see if it's going to be in the way for us to pull everything off. Once we have all that out of the way, we can actually start to dive into the head itself, which actually doesn't seem to be too terribly complicated to get off, but we'll show you that when we get there. Got the carb off. I was able to just kind of loosen up and swing this engine guard out of the way. Pulled our spark plugs off. This one does have dual plugs. All right, gonna be pulling off the valve cover now. Not bad. The kit comes with new gaskets and everything for this. Got our rockers in here. Let's just kind of... Everything seems to be pretty solid. I saw that some of these can get pretty bad play up and down. These aren't bad at all. So what they recommend is that I put the engine at top dead center before pulling this apart. So there's a little inspection plug right here. I can pull that out. And then what I'm going to do is put the bike in like 5th gear, and I can just use that rear wheel to turn the engine around. Hopefully it'll be easy enough with at least the spark plugs out on this side. And I'm looking for, I'll have to look at the book again and see, there's some sort of mark on the, I guess it's the flywheel, maybe it's the crank, I'm not sure what it is. We're looking for that mark to line up. That way we know that this side is going to be at top dead center. If you can see in that little hole, there's an OT with a little line over it. That's what we're looking for. That's the top dead center mark. So we line that up with this little notch. And with any 4-stroke engine, this piston is going to be at top dead center twice. We're looking for top dead center on the compression stroke. We know that by the fact that both of these rockers have a little bit of play in them. So we know that that is on compression. The valves and everything are completely seated into the head. The reason we want these to be loose is so that when we loosen up the bolts, nothing is going to start to kind of bind or twist or anything based on pressure coming from those valve springs. Before I do that, we need to take off our exhaust, which can be a little bit tricky on these. So the reason these exhausts can be somewhat of a pain is because of this kind of proprietary exhaust flange or little ring around here. You do need a special tool. Don't try to do this with a pair of pliers or something. You'll break these little pieces right off. Ideally, at some point in the past, as these have been taken on and off, people have used copper anti-seize on this. That's what's recommended to keep the threads from kind of seizing on. We are about to find out. Just kind of lightly tap it. Oh yeah, we're getting some movement. Oh yeah. Okay, 1 out of 2 ain't bad. Let's try the other side. You guys won't be able to see me, but you'll just have to take my word for it. Coming. We're going to be in the clear. Nice. So let me go ahead and get these pulled off. I already undid the 2 exhaust clamps at the bottom. So in theory, once they're both off, I should be able to just kind of shove the exhaust forward and take it off the bike completely. You'd think it was my first day on YouTube, because apparently I left the camera in time-lapse mode. So this whole time I was talking to the camera, you guys didn't get to see any of it. Anyway, we have cylinder head off. I was able to pull the rocker arms. I got everything nice, clean, kind of put in its exact position as it came off the bike, so I can keep everything in order. We're pulling the cylinder off now, but I'm about to stick some cardboard behind here to kind of catch this piston. We can just kind of make our little cradle using the bottom 2 studs. Just like that. So there's supposed to be 2 O-rings. Okay, 1 O-ring stayed behind, the other one must still be in the cylinder here. Keep walking this out. Boom. That's our other O-ring. I'm going to put it back on here just for now. There are replacements for this in the kit as well. And now we have access to these super hard and dry rotted push rod tubes. You don't necessarily have to do this part, but I'm going to go ahead and pull the wrist pin and pull the piston off of the connecting rod. There is some pretty heavy carbon buildup, so I'm going to go ahead and take this opportunity to clean it. On this side, there's just like a little C-clip, circlip kind of thing. Should be able to push this wrist pin over. Like that. The cardboard should catch the connecting rod. And we can pull out our piston. That thing is huge. Compared to like the CB550, pistons and stuff that I normally work on. I mean, that's probably, makes sense, about 4 times as big, because it's half the number of cylinders and almost exactly twice the cc's. So that's nutty. I mean, that's like a full small block Chevy size piston, if I had to guess. I don't know what the bore is on this thing, but I'm guessing it's 3.5 to 4 inches, something like that. All this looks to be in fantastic shape though. I mean, the cross hatching on the inside of the cylinder is like it was done yesterday. Even though the bike's got 50-something thousand miles on it, I mean, all of that looks super fresh. It's now the next morning. I'm going to spend a little bit of time just cleaning everything up. I want to get rid of all of this kind of caked on oil and grease. That way we'll have a kind of fresh starting point to put everything back together. I am going to go ahead and clean up the cylinder head as well. The carbon buildup on the top of the piston isn't bad, but I might give it a little bit of a clean. I don't like to leave a lot of thick carbon that can kind of create a little bit of a hot spot on the piston. So I'm going to go ahead and take some time to clean that up as well, and then we'll start to reassemble everything. I have everything pretty well cleaned up. I went ahead and put the piston back in the cylinder as well. I actually don't own a piston ring compressor, so if you just put the cylinder down, you can just kind of gently start the piston and just squeeze each individual piston ring, being very careful. Piston rings are incredibly brittle, so you can snap them if you go too crazy, but if you just slowly work your way around with your fingernails, pushing it in, it's not that big of a deal. When I do classic Hondas, I do the same thing, but I have to do all 4 cylinders at once, not just one cylinder. So I am ready to go back in. I have my new O-ring on the bottom of my cylinder. I need to open this little packet and replace these little O-rings right here. Make sure I get the right ones, because there are, okay, so there's 4 of one size, 2 of a larger size, so we need the 4 that are the same size, and of course we only need 2 of them at the moment. I am going to take these off, and I'm actually going to stick these O-rings on the cylinder itself with a little bit of grease to hold them in place. That way they don't get torn on these threads while I'm sliding this on. It's pretty easy for them to get kind of caught underneath and cause them to give me some troubles. So I'll just stick them. It's very obvious where they go because 2 of the holes are completely flat. 2 of them have a little recessed area. Just the tiniest dab of grease. All we're looking to do is to hold this O-ring in place. And the last 2 things, of course, pushrod tube seals. The whole reason we're doing this project. Just make sure you get the orientation right. There is a little line on them. The line's going to end up going straight down. Not too worried about the rotation at the moment, just because we can kind of turn them into place once we clear this frame rail. But we want to make sure that we obviously don't put them on backwards. Ready to send this thing home. Just make sure we are very ginger about it. Slide it up. What we need to do is lift our connecting rod so that it goes inside the piston. And we can slide our wrist pin through once everything lines up. Close. We might have to clock the piston around a little bit to get everything in the perfect spot. Also want to make sure, I don't know if I mentioned this already, but when you put your piston in, there's an arrow on it. You want the arrow pointing towards the front of the bike. There we go. You don't ever want to force a wrist pin in. If it's not going smoothly, don't hesitate to pull everything apart, look at it. You just got to get all 3 of those bores lined up just perfectly, and they're designed to not have any slop in them. So now we're ready to put our little C-clip, circlip back on. Looking good. I'm going to go ahead and pull my cardboard out. Make sure our O-rings are still in place. Now comes the part where we have to make sure that our new pushrod seals are clearing the frame, and they just did. Make sure everything's sent home. Boom. Just like that. Make sure our lines are pointing straight down, and they are. Sweet. So we just need to get this as close as we can. When we lightly start to torque down our bolts, that will actually suck everything up exactly to the cylinder, but not bad. This is the point where we put on our new cylinder head gasket. This guy right here. I don't believe there's a front or a back orientation, but obviously there's an orientation where the pushrod tubes are at the bottom. Perfect, now we're ready for our cylinder head. Obviously there's only one way this can go on, with our exhaust pointing forward. Like that. We are ready for our push rods, rockers, and the head bolts. I'll start to get everything started and I'll bring you guys back when we do the torque sequence. So there is a specific pattern we want to go in. It's basically going to be this one, down, bottom right, bottom left, top right, bottom center, top center. So like that, kind of crisscross pattern. The final torque spec is 39 Newton meters. What they recommend is doing like 15, then 25, then 35, then 29. Or sorry, 39 at the end. Now that the bolts are all torqued down, I'm going to go ahead and take this opportunity to double check our valve clearance. It's easy because we're already at top dead center on this side. We know that because we lined up our mark earlier. I'm actually going to double check that real quick to make sure when we were installing our piston and everything we didn't move that crank at all. Nope, still lined up, good to go. So we're looking for 4 thousandths of an inch on the intake side, 8 thousandths of an inch on the exhaust side. That feels pretty good. It's got just a little bit of drag on it, but no extra play. So we're going to call that good. 8 thousandths on this side. That feels good as well. Nice. So like I said, I didn't expect them to be out since we didn't actually move these lock nuts. In theory, this bolted back on and torqued would just return it right back to where it was before we started. So that's basically going to be it for this side. I'm going to throw a new gasket on the valve cover here, or rocker cover, whatever they call it. Throw that on. I do have some new spark plugs and stuff as well, but I want to go ahead and go to the other side and knock that side out as well before we do anything like putting the exhaust or any of that kind of stuff back on. Uh-oh, people. We have discovered an issue. So I'm glad I found it. It is a bit unfortunate, but as soon as I pulled the cylinder off, I heard this noise. I was like, huh, was that a washer or something I forgot to take out? What was that, what was that clank? Come to find out, it is a chunk of piston ring. So this is the portion of the oil control ring that is missing. So I don't know if it's been like that for years. I don't know what the deal is, but as soon as it was free out of the cylinder, this thing came flying right out. I'm happy that I found it because this issue can cause burning oil and like smoke out of the exhaust. If enough oil is getting by this piston into the combustion chamber, it can start to burn. That's when you'll see like a blue smoke out of your exhaust. I would certainly rather find that now than when this is all completely buttoned up and on the road for the first time and all of a sudden we have a cloud of blue smoke behind us and we have to try and diagnose it at that point. So I'm happy that I found it. Obviously, I would have wished it never happened, but what I need to do now is I obviously can't continue until we order some new piston rings. So I need to measure this piston and make sure that it is in fact the stock size. I've been burned in the past by ordering a set of piston rings and then later finding out that they were oversized pistons at just some point in this bike's life. That could have happened. So I just want to make sure that this is the stock size so I can order the correct size piston rings, and we'll have to swap them out and continue this project when those parts arrive. Confirmed right here on the top of the piston, it says 93.96, which stock, they say 94 millimeter piston. So we have piston rings on the way. They should be here next week. Well, that's going to be the unfortunate stopping point for this video. I decided for this bike, I'm just going to kind of film everything and show it to you guys, somewhat live. You'll see it just a couple of days after I do it. So we have a lot of work we can knock out while we're waiting for those parts to come in. So that's the next video you guys will see. We'll dive into, I don't know, whatever else on the laundry list of things we need to do to this bike. So I appreciate you guys watching as always. I hope you enjoy the R100 series. A little bit unfortunate news today, but nothing we can't fix. I'll see you on the next one.